It's a challenge for me to do things like the 62-mile ride at Tour de Cure and finish on time. Somewhere around mile 64, as the sun was setting, I was run off the road by an angry motorist.
Wow.
I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And he said, I don't know, most of you are dead already.
Yeah.
But you have to remember in 1972, if I wanted to test my blood sugar, I had to go to the hospital to do
So-
it. Some of the time you have to figure it out on your own. The problem was not the doctor, but the fact that I followed his advice for 42 years without ever checking in.
Located deep in the heart of Texas and live from the Hard Rock Ranch in Studio A1C, it's Diabetes Sucks, but Life Doesn't Have to, the talk show, with your host, Brian Reynolds. I'm your announcer, Bill Tiffany, along with the super talented one-man band leader, Dr. Dwayne Washington, inviting you to join BR and his guests. And now here's the man with the perfect 5.5 A1C, the man we call BR, Brian Reynolds.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dr. Washington. And hello, everybody, and welcome to Diabetes Sucks, but Life Doesn't Have to. Today, we have one of the few guys out there that diabetes is actually more afraid of him than he is of it. Our guest hasn't allowed diabetes to slow him down. As a matter of fact, he doesn't slow down for anything. In 2019, he set the record for the fastest time to run across Texas. In 2021, he ran cross country from Disneyland to Disney World, all to raise awareness for diabetes. In 2024, he started the T1 Deca Man Solo, which is the equivalent of 10 Ironmans with 24-mile swims, biking 1,120 miles, and a 262-mile run. So buckle up, everybody. We have the real Ironman with us today, Mr. Don Muchow.
It's great to be here.
Well, thank you, Don, for showing up. You are really kind of a legend in the diabetes world, and there is a kind of a circle that we all have with the American Diabetes Association, and I'm very grateful for those guys to introduce me to you and arrange for you to come here, because you have probably one of the better stories out there than any. Your story is not even a story. It's like a mini series for TV. It's like a 9-series TV show with 141 episodes. You can. All we have to do is kind of wind you up and turn you loose with all the information you have and all the experiences. But, you and I are just kind of really getting to know each other. But you have type 1 diabetes. And
That's
so
correct.
Tell me a little bit about that. How did you, when you found out, and how that affected your life and what you've been doing? So
I was 11 years old at the time.
Okay.
This was 1972, so roughly 10 years before the first home glucose meters came out.
Oh, okay.
And I was a fairly normal, active, teenager. And the diagnosis came shortly after I thought I was recovering from an episode with the flu. As a lot of people know, it's not atypical for people with type 1 to find out that they have type 1 shortly after a viral episode. In fact,
Okay.
during the run across the U.S., I ran into a lady who was probably one of the first people I know who contracted type 1 after recovering from COVID.
Wow.
So the flu never went away. We thought something was weird, and my mom took me to the hospital. We were at a military brat, so it was a base hospital in I believe it was Ruislip in England, and they ran some tests, and I think at that time just basically a basic glucose tolerance test, and my blood sugar was somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 milligrams per deciliter. I don't know how many millimoles that is, but it was off the charts.
Wow.
And I kind of got a quick education right after that on what I could and could not do. And I put quotes around that because I'd been told by my endocrinologist at the time, and that 11-year-old kid realizing he has to have an endocrinologist was a big surprise to me, that I should not be physically active.
Oh, really?
And it makes no sense in the context of today's medicine But you have to remember in 1972, if I wanted to test my blood sugar, I had to go to the hospital to do it.
So they knew back then that exercise and things like that could drive your blood sugar
Exactly.
down. So they were just saying you need to preserve your blood sugar more or less.
Right. Stay within the rails, eat this exact same thing every day,
Okay.
take this exact same dose every day, and maybe things will be okay. The only real clue I had if I was going low was that I felt funny.
Okay.
And, that often was not a good enough indicator of anything. So I probably spent the first 20 years with type 1 waffling between not knowing what was safe to do or actually being afraid of exercise, which was pretty common for a lot of people growing up with type 1 at that time. And on the other hand, wanting to get out and be a normal kid and being afraid of what would happen if I did go ride my bike and didn't feel right or something, and my mom would find, I had
How long
passed
did
out
you
on the road.
stay in that kind of the holding pattern to just kind of lay low?
A decade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from 1972 to about 1982 when I got
So
my
you
first
watched every
refrigerator.
rerun of the Flintstones and all the
Pretty
TV
much. Yeah, no, it was challenging because my parents didn't know what to do either. So, they were figuring it out as they went. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I like to tell people that my justified fears of low blood glucose led me to the exact opposite place of where I wanted to be.
Okay.
I was so afraid of, passing out in my sleep that I let my blood sugar run high. And by 2004, at this point, having followed the don't exercise advice for some 40 odd years, I discovered that I had proliferative retinopathy. And this was the wake up call for me to be physically active, even when I was scared of it, and to sort of face down that bear in his own cave and figure out what I was going to do about living
So
with it.
you were basically the boy in the bubble that just finally just had enough of that.
Yeah, you sort of pop the bubble and go see what the real world is like and
Okay.
take your punches. And, being afraid of low blood sugars, I think the first thing you have to realize is that it's a justifiable fear, especially in an 11-year-old kid.
Of course.
But it can take you to the wrong place if you're so afraid that you let complications creep up on you. And, this many years later, I just turned 65. In fact, I'm finding that some of the complications that were predicted if I didn't get control of my blood sugar are coming home to bite me, even though I've been 20 years physically active. Things I did in my teens left a mark that had I known better, I would have taken a different approach.
Yeah. I think that's kind of life in general. Like if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care
Yeah.
of myself. Kind of.
No,
That's
I had an interesting conversation with a cardiologist, another word I'm learning, cardiologist, after I had a bad stress test a couple of years ago. And I said, well, what do you do with somebody with type 1 like this who's physically active and, wants to lead a normal life and has, some heart issues? And he said, I don't know. Most of you are dead already.
yeah.
So
That's kind of like that George Burns thing. He smoked like 20 cigars a day and says, what does your doctor have to say about you smoking all these cigars every day? He goes, my doctor's dead.
yeah, no, that's a good point. So, you do end up one way or another realizing that some of the time you have to figure it out on your own. And I think that
Yes.
that's the second scariest part after realizing that nobody's got all the answers is realizing you have
Isn't that the truth?
you have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that. I'm so happy you actually just kind of came out and said it that way because that's what I've finally figured out that you can get all the advice in the world and there's kind of a cookie cutter format like follow these simple instructions da 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 da. But at the end of the day, there are some metrics that you have to stick with that says something I need to keep my blood sugar at this level.
Yeah.
what do you do to get there? And the only person that's going to know that is yourself because you're different than me. I'm different than you. Everybody's different. So,
Yeah.
but
Go ahead.
by sharing these stories, people can start to kind of understand, like, okay, well, the doctor said this, and we're not advocating don't listen to your doctor. It's not that at all. But you still have to use your brain and figure some stuff out.
Absolutely. Yeah. To kind of clarify, with the doctor in 1972, he was practicing the best medicine there was in 1972. And without glucose meters, he was guiding me to avoid a very real risk. The problem was not the doctor, but the fact that I followed his advice for 42 years without ever checking in.
Oh no.
And so I convinced myself it was better to not exercise than it was to exercise when every doctor in the US was saying, no, you need to go out and be active. You need to walk the dog or something half an hour every week.
So when I first heard of you and the whole type 1, I have type 2 diabetes, but type 1 is obviously just a totally different animal where we can kind of intersect in the middle for what normal looks like for both of us. But still, understanding what the doctor tells you to do, there seems to be this whole underlying sentiment with type 1 that maybe you don't want to do anything totally nutty to drive your blood sugar down, but you have done some things that seems to me to be anti successful, but yet your success story speaks volumes for itself. So tell us about the exercise that you routines that you do. And I mean, I'm not even going to attempt to try to keep up with you. That'd be like the stupidest thing I've ever tried to do. I'm totally impressed with your abilities to exercise and to just punch the envelope, So
You mentioned exercise programs, exercise plans for the individual. And I would say that the thing to remember is that it is always about the individual. The best advice that I ever got when I was learning to be physically active was from a swim coach. This guy is out in California now, I think, but he said that when I asked him what my training plan was, he said, "I don't know. I haven't gotten to know you yet." And that kind of stuck with me, is that you definitely, especially if you're in a position where you're sharing a message with people, as I know that I am, to not cross the line into saying, go ahead and try that when I don't know what effect it's going to have on that person. There's an old joke about Superman getting drunk in a bar, and this guy decides he's going to kind of one up Clark Kent. He doesn't know he's Superman. And Clark Kent challenges the guy to run out the window, do a couple of turns in the air, and come back in. And just to be fair, Clark Kent goes first, flies out the window, does a couple of turns, comes back in, and the next guy runs and jumps out the window and hits the ground. And the bartender turns over to Kent and says, Superman, when you're drunk, sometimes you can be a real butthole. So I don't want to be...
I think he's a butthole all the time.
Yeah.
He's always...
Yeah. I don't want to be that guy who, knowingly having done some things that some people would consider are amazing, turn around and say to somebody who's just getting started on an exercise program, sure, you go hit the lake, just stop at 6 miles and get some food and, let me know how it goes. Because I didn't get there instantly, and it's not fair to say to someone, this possibility is within you and it is within your grasp now.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to say to someone, don't underestimate what you are capable of doing if you stick with it and take baby steps. Bite off a little bit more than you did last time. Mm-hmm. See what happens to you. If it brings you into a low blood sugar state, then don't do that exact same thing again, because now you know what happens. But if you find, okay, well, I started to drift low, I treated with some carbs, now at 2 miles, 3 miles, wherever you are in your program, whatever your program is, that's the point where you, individual with diabetes, correct your blood sugar, pick up and keep going. I like to tell people that managing blood sugar is the fourth sport in triathlon. or if you're running a marathon, it's the sport that you do in parallel with running.
I can almost imagine that you like that old John Belushi thing on Saturday Night Live where he's eating the Twinkies at the track meet. And
Yeah. Well, and I've been in that situation.
yeah, you have to be.
You see
because
people looking at you and they're like, man, you need to have an omelet or a protein bar. And it's like, no, my
people
blood
who
sugar's
don't have
low.
diabetes, when your blood sugar starts going down, it's like, yes, I think I must eat now. Well, we'll be eating here a little bit. Like, I don't think you understand. I won't be here in a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a tribe. I totally get your vibe on that. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we have to realize is that it's different for us, whether it's type 1 or type 2, it doesn't really matter. I think the biggest challenge when we're talking about dealing with the normie world out there is that they don't realize a lot of the time just how much goes into managing these things. Not looking for a participation trophy for getting my blood sugar under control, but sometimes we do need to sort of stop, get some sugar, and then get back to what we were doing.
But well, what you are is you're an advocate for fitness and health for people who have diabetes because you said, you don't just start off running 6 miles. You take baby steps, and that's okay. But the thing is, you can run 6 miles right now. If I say go run 6 miles, you're like, okay. But the thing that you're doing though is you're showing people that no matter how bad you are, because you've already told us how sick you were and how badly, and you just didn't want to be that guy anymore. And you said, what do I got to do to not be that person? And that's what we admire about you. So you're a role model for somebody that's like, man, this is just, I call the show Diabetes Sucks for a reason because it sucks, right?
Yeah, and it's never gonna
Well,
not suck until there's a cure.
so everybody who has it gets it pretty quick. Like, diabetes sucks. This really sucks. Well, yeah, it does. So what are you going to do about that? You're just going to sit there and let it suck, or you just going to like learn to deal with it and get on with your
Yeah.
life? And I'm amazed too. I'm like that too. I'm not going to go run. I'm not going to go run. To me, running is a technique to keep from getting beat up. Okay, I don't run. Now I do walk. Okay, but I don't run. These knees, this hip says we're going to go a little slower, but that's okay. That's what I've learned to do. So
Yeah. Now I would say that you had mentioned excuse me, let me get some water real quick. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
righty to tidy, lefty.
You know what? Yeah, I'll do it later. Yeah, no,
I got an iron grip here.
Yeah,
You're the Iron Man, but I got the iron grip.
there you go.
See there? Look at that haze that was. There you go. I even washed my hands.
I should ask you about your workout routine. Thank you.
I need some sugar now that I did something like that.
That's funny. You were talking about, heading out the door and deciding, I'm going to go do this today. And while there are always risks to getting started doing something, and sometimes it feels like if you start late, what's the point in doing it? And I would say tomorrow is going to come no matter what you do or don't do. But you have to ask yourself, where do you want to be tomorrow? Do you want to be a little bit farther along your fitness journey? Do you want to be a little bit healthier than you were yesterday?
Yeah.
Or do you want to still be complaining about where you are? And I understand, I've been there.
I mean, it could be as simple as I want to see my grandkid
Exactly.
all the way to I want to see what happens on Landman next season. You got to be around.
Yeah,
next season.
yeah.
So-
And I really do think that you have to approach it from that perspective. I remember when I first started being physically active, it was right after I had gotten the proliferative bad retinopathy diagnosis.
the one that's really bad.
Exactly. The one that sounds like profiterole.
It's easy for you to say.
Exactly. Right after I'd gotten that diagnosis, I had already signed, this was in 2004, I'd already signed up for a 5K. And I was feeling good about myself for having decided on my own to be physically active. And then I got the diagnosis that they had to laser that spot in my eye. And it was very likely that once they had treated the retinopathy, that I'd have a blind spot. And I remember asking the retina specialist, so what happens next time this happens? it's the same thing. Keep you from going blind. We're going to give you a blind spot. And I started to see what was going to happen there is that eventually I would be so unblind that I couldn't see out of that eye.
So you got a blind spot right now?
Yeah, I just right straight. If I'm looking at you, there's a spot right to one side of my
Really?
one side of my fovea that I can't see through it.
Really?
And it was kind of a come to Jesus for me
Wow.
that there was no easy way out. I could just pull a cord and the bus driver would stop the bus. I had to figure out what I was going to do from that day forward every single day and hope to God that I had gotten my chance and taken it before things got really bad. And I made myself a promise back in 2004 that I would not turn around and look at where I had been in case I hadn't gone far enough.
Well,
And
you figured out how to go as far as you can go. So tell us a little bit about the far trip, the one that you decided to run from coast to coast, from Mickey Mouse to Mickey Mouse.
yeah. I got
I
the
guess Mickey Mouse was there to see you off, and Mickey Mouse was there to greet you on your Disneyland.
it was a little bit different from that. Nobody really knew what I was attempting to do when I started.
So did you like to actually start at the gate of Disneyland? Or?
A bit of a side story, but because it was essentially a transcontinental run, and in the transcontinental running community, everyone thinks you should have a wet foot in each ocean.
Mhm.
I started at Newport Beach to get my foot wet. It was a 13-mile run directly north to Anaheim and the gates of Disneyland. Then a 2,761-mile run east. And when I got to Disney World, I had another, I'm trying to think, probably about 30 miles to go before I got to the coast and put my foot in the water.
Oh, wow.
And
That was probably the hardest part of the whole deal. Like, I'm sort of finished, but I'm going anyway.
the day that I arrived at Walt Disney World, first of all, I was very nervous whether they would pull my cameraman when I got to the property, because Disney has a very strict
Oh, yeah.
strict
yeah.
policy that they don't want camera crews, they don't want filming in the park, none of that stuff. And so I was very anxious about that. They were anxious that I wasn't going to show up on time because I was doing a TV interview about a mile north of there for CBS Miami, I believe it was. No, CBS Orlando. And so I didn't know what to expect when I got to the park. When I got to the Contemporary, where my wife had made a lunch reservation so she could get a parking spot, the security guard at the
Wait a minute, I got to finish. So you were running, but you ran to the restaurant to go eat.
Oh, no.
Okay.
We were going to try to get to the gates and take a quick photo.
Oh, okay.
And the closest parking spot to the gates of the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World in Orlando were across the street at the Disney Contemporary Hotel.
I got you. Okay.
There's literally nowhere to park. They don't allow on-street parking anywhere near there. Or we could have parked a couple of miles north of there at a 7-Eleven and then run back.
Literally run back.
Yeah. My wife didn't want to do the running. She's got a bad knee, I think like kind of a little bit like what you were talking about. So we decided we would just make a lunch reservation at the Contemporary, park the van so that she could come meet me, and we would walk into the park together. And the security guard at the Contemporary said, "Are you the runner?" And I thought, oh God, they know I'm here. They know I have a cameraman. This is going to turn sideways as soon as I start heading into the gate at the Magic Kingdom. And I said, I mean, it's okay, right? I'm all right. And he said, yeah, don't worry about it. I said, what about my cameraman? Yeah, don't worry about it. So I'm heading into the Magic Kingdom, and security guard at the gate says, good luck. And I'm just like, wow, these guys already know I'm coming. So I had kind of an inkling that something was going to happen. And this was, of course, during the time of COVID. So Disney was kind of open and then not open, and open and then not open. And so they had a lot of staff at that time who were there to handle the crush in traffic. But at the time that I was hitting the gates, they were, I guess, maybe somewhat idle. And when I got to the gates, they opened them up, and they basically, there were 300 cast members who were standing there just to wait for my arrival.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And some guy handed me a balloon, and somebody else handed me a water bottle, and then another person handed me a T-shirt. Then somebody else handed me a stuffed Mickey. And then Melissa Valaquette, who was the acting president of Disney Parks at that time, handed me a Mickey Mouse cap that had been custom embroidered Disneyland to Disney World. They had been in on this thing the whole time.
Really? That's neat.
I don't think they knew when I was in Anaheim that this was how it was going to end up. And nobody ever knows when you've got 88 days from start to finish.
88 days was, wow, it would have taken me 888,000 days to do it, but yeah.
Well, we had some pauses. Because of COVID, we had to stop a couple of times because we could not resupply the van. And then I had to stop once because in the process, probably about a third of the way across the U.S., my father passed away.
Oh, no.
And I had planned on taking a couple of days off for the funeral and getting back
So you
to it.
kind of just picked up where you left off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We had,
Counts.
it's typical for transcontinental runs for people to stop at a known marker,
Okay.
like a sign that says, welcome to Flagstaff or something like that,
Yeah.
and then go back to that sign and pick up. But I found that when I got back to my starting point, I was in a bad place emotionally because of my father's death. I told myself, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep running to honor his legacy, to keep a promise to him that I was going to finish. But the first couple of days back were just horrible. My heart wasn't in it. And I literally had to force to put one foot in front of the other.
Well, there's definitely something called momentum that you got to get back
Yeah.
in stride. So,
But after a while, it's very quiet out there and you have a lot of time to sit with your thoughts. And I came to the realization that the best thing I could do was get my head screwed on straight, take good care of myself because my dad wasn't going to be there to worry for me anymore, and to sort of do what I promised him I would do, which is make it to the Magic Kingdom in Orlando, get to the coast, put one foot in the water, and then remember him and honor him there.
yeah.
And I had this vision in my head that once I got to the East Coast and got my foot in the water, I was going to put a memorial token in the water, and then I was going to, pick it up, put it back in my pocket, and the token was lost in the ocean. As soon as I put it in, the surf came in and swept it out.
Wow.
And not to get metaphysical about it or anything, but I realized at a kind of a spiritual level, this was my dad letting go.
Wow.
I would never see that token again in the way I would never see him again. And I had to realize that I had kept my promise, and this was a positive thing, but it was also kind of a sad thing that, after putting everything on pause because of COVID, because of my dad's funeral, and starting back up and having a heavy heart when I did, that it really is all about putting one foot in front of the other and getting to where you said you were going, even when things suck. And it doesn't always suck just because of diabetes. Sometimes it sucks because of life events. Sometimes it sucks because you get injured. Sometimes it sucks because of normal people stuff. And the worst thing you can do is give up when it gets hard.
Well, you have everybody's admiration for what you've done. That's a great story. Sad about your dad, but that's also very good that your dad, knew that you were doing this and that you kept your promise. I mean, that's really neat. So
I had a conversation with him not long before he passed away, and I don't think I realized how serious his condition was. He had idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, so his lungs were basically getting kind of stiff and fibrous and so forth as time went on. And I told him I was going to make it to the coast, and he said, I'll be there if I can. And I didn't realize that it was, I'll be there if I can finish washing the poodle or, if I can get gas in the car. He literally meant he was hanging on for dear life to try to see me finish. And that was one reason it felt so holy to me to keep my promise to him, is that he had tried to stay alive long enough to see it. I needed to make sure it happened. And so one of the things that did for me was to put me in a better place mentally about putting dedication to everyday things, especially when COVID hit. I I had real doubts as to whether I'd be able to resume the big run. And I had to figure out what was I going to do every day to convince myself that one day we would start back up again. And so I started growing. I put apple seeds, just Fuji apples or whatever apples I had eaten. Started putting them in little pots, watering them, and once they started sprouting, I put them in the garden and water them and so on. And um, by the time I started to run back up, I had these little saplings I needed to take care of, and I had to tell our house sitter while we were gone on the run, water those apple trees. They're really important to me because every day I looked at them, they were a reminder that something positive happened in the day that had gone by, even though I wasn't, even a foot farther along the journey with the run. I was making progress, and I had to remind myself that good things happen sometimes when you just sort of sit there and sit with the discomfort and think about what am I going to do today? What am I going to do tomorrow until you get these things done? Yeah.
That's good. So tell me, you already said you stuck your foot in the water on the East Coast. What about the rest of your body? Sounds like you know how to swim.
There's a really funny story I have to tell you. When I got to the finish line, it wasn't quite the crowd, the TV coverage as it was right when we hit Disney World. But when I got to the coast, there were some reporters from Florida Today, and the guy was talking with me, and we had a camera and everything. And he gave me my private moment to go put the token in the ocean. And I started wandering back up on shore, and I turned around and looked at the ocean for just a second. And he said, "You're not going to swim that next, are you?" And I realized that I hadn't really thought about what was going to happen after I finished that dream. And so I kind of made myself a soft promise that I would try to do something hard. Just
Something harder than
yeah. Well, it wasn't me. At the time, it was a hard thing for me. But I decided I was going to try to go swim around Key West, which is a 12-mile swim. And
wait, so how long did it take you to go to the Key West swim from the run? The run first and
it was that same year.
Oh, really?
I believe.
Wow.
Let me think about it. Actually, no. I started training that year, and I think I did the Key West swim in 2022.
Okay.
And as it was with the U.S. run, I was worried I couldn't do it. I had no idea how I was going to get to there from here, other than whatever I did the next day. And I remember going to the pool and swimming mind-numbing distances in the pool, and then going out to the lake, and when the weather was good, trying to get in as many miles as I could.
Were you a swimmer before, or you just I'm gonna swim, just kind of came to you?
I had finished an Ironman a few years before that, so I was familiar with the idea of swimming around 2.5 miles. And, I knew enough not to be scared in the water, but I didn't know anything about endurance in the water. I did not know how to do what they call feeds, where you roll over on your back and somebody hands you a bike water bottle full of maple syrup and Gatorade or whatever mixed together.
Yeah.
And
Homebrew.
yeah, pretty much. So yeah, you have to have your electrolytes, you have to have your carbs, you have to have, plenty of water and everything. And you find out during training that some of that stuff tastes awful when you're swimming in salt water and you've got salt water in your mouth. But as we figured these things out, as we got farther and farther with the training, I realized that I was never going to beat the tides if I couldn't figure out how to swim faster. And at that point, we were like 2 to 3 weeks before Key West. So I punted and I did the half distance swim, which is a 6.1 mile swim along the coast, the south coast of Key West.
So was this an event, or did you just?
Yes.
Okay.
The College of the Florida Keys does an annual swim around the Keys.
Okay.
There is another one as well, but I like the College of the Florida Keys swim. And they basically had a 10K, which is sort of a practice run for the big swim. And I was so nervous about whether I was going to do this right. I kept looking over at my kayaker, who was never close enough to catch up with. And, there were times when I would so desperately want him to slow down so I could catch up with him and get a drink of water. And he just kept being slightly out of reach. And
So was this somebody you'd been swimming with before?
I met him on the run.
Okay.
I ran into him I think it was Crystal Springs, Florida. And he said, "Is there anything you need?" And I think he thought I was, sure, get me a water bottle and he'll get me a hamburger or whatever. And I said, "I need a kayaker for Key West." And he said, "All right, I'll do it." And at that point, I decided, when I'm looking out at the ocean several days later, that I actually needed to keep that promise because I had my kayaker. So he did kayak for me at the 10K. He was willing to kayak all the way around the island. And I was so nervous about not finishing on time that I came in second. And I was amazed when I got to the shore and I said, "All right, was the clock still running? Did I finish on time?" And they said, "You're the first male out of the water, so you're good." And
Wow.
I was really surprised that I had actually managed to do something surprising to me, which is not just a marathon swim, but to actually place in a marathon swim. And I still want to go back and do Key West. But in the intervening years since 2022, I learned that I had some of the long-term complications, cardiac complications of living with diabetes for a long time, no matter how well you manage it. Diabetes type 1 or type 2 is a fundamentally inflammatory.
No matter what you do, a piece of that hand's just going to come out of the ground.
Yeah, you can have perfect blood sugars and you're going to have worse cardiac results than other people. And, I guess that's the bomb nobody expects to go off.
Wow. So,
And the thing you have to remember is it's not your fault. It never was your fault. It's not a lifestyle thing. It doesn't happen because you're lazy or you don't know when to stop eating. It happens because it's medical.
you're doing good, buddy.
Huh? Do all right?
Yeah, you got it.
Sorry, I don't mean to rattle on, but
No. Rattling on is how we do the show. It's either you or me, and not really be you.
yeah, no,
What a boring podcast that was.
yeah.
It's like,
I could amp it up. I could set myself on fire or something. Never done that.
Hey, we got snacks to do a snack too, by the way.
I'm good. Let me double check real quick, but I'm pretty sure I'm good. Yeah, we're not bad.
It takes two, right?
What's your time frame here, Yeez?
I'm wide open, but we can go as long as you need to go. I'm sure your crew probably doesn't want it to last longer than a couple of hours, but
Oh, no, we're good. You can do
All
what
right.
you need to do. This may be an exciting three-parter, so
I can stay here until you're done with me. You may, need to give me some cues as to if we're running up against an hour border or something like that.
no, you can talk as long as you need to. If you need to take a break or something,
All right.
good.
You'll know we went too long when you just see a bunch of skeletons out there. They're all dead.
There you go.
Reminder to
been Joe quiet.
All right,
No worries.
we're back. And, okay, go ahead.
You let you
3, 2, and you were talking about it's not your fault. Not your fault.
Yes, one thing to remember is that it's not your fault. A lot of people tend to think, even when you're doing a high profile event, to raise awareness of the challenges that people with diabetes face when they're exercising. I met a guy in Reform, Alabama. I was right around mile 2000 of the run across the U.S. And I was dressed in bright orange clothing. It looked like a Hare Krishna, basically. But I wanted to be visible.
Yeah.
And this guy says, "Well, where are you going dressed like that?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing a run across the U.S. I'm trying to raise awareness about diabetes." And he literally says to me, "You wouldn't have diabetes if you started an exercise program."
Yes.
I was
Your tongue's hanging out.
It's like, I should have put on something besides running clothes and running shoes and listened to your advice. And I realized that a lot.
That was the missing link. I hadn't thought about that. I need to
Darn
exercise.
it. I should have thought of that. But it made me realize that, no slam on this man in particular, but it made me realize that a lot of people still believe that it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm grateful that I swim train with a guy who's type 2. And he is type 2 because his ability to self-regulate his body weight was destroyed after thyroid cancer treatments. And he has no internal signal that it's time to stop eating. He just has to eat what he puts on his plate and then stop when it's not on his plate anymore. And, you know,
That's always been my cue to start eating off of somebody else's plate.
yeah. But, you know, he can't self-regulate his hunger or his body weight. It's literally no amount of willpower, short of writing it on a teleprompter and, running it past him as he's eating, do not eat that second bite, is going to help anything. He has what he has because he had thyroid cancer and it left him with type 2.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow.
So you have to remember that while some people may be on a personal struggle with weight or a psychological journey with their relationship with food, that is not all of us. And it's not safe to make those assumptions. You have to look at the person and say, hey, how can I help you? Or as you get to know them, tell me more about your struggle and how I can be supportive, rather than saying you just need to stop eating so much and start an exercise program when you're 2,000 miles into your exercise program.
Yeah. No, it's every man for himself to some degree because everybody's different, and
Yeah.
so that's a sad reality that you have to figure these things out, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. But once you kind of figure out what works for you, you stick with
Yeah.
what works. And so you definitely been running and all over the place, and now you start to swim. Tell me more about the swims. Is that something that you continue to do this very day? And
I've been getting back into it after getting clearance from my sports cardiologist as to how much is safe, where to keep my heart rate, things to do to avoid arrhythmias and so forth. But yes, I'm returning to it.
I would almost think that swimming would be almost the better of everything, just about.
It's an interesting sport when it comes to both diabetes and heart issues. One of the things that is true of swimming is that because you're basically lying down, your blood pressure tends to be lower and more stable. You don't get these sudden increases in blood pressure when you're trying to be king of the mountain on a bicycle ride or something like that. So blood pressure wise, it's not bad. Blood sugar wise, it is more consistently aerobic than something like a bike ride where, you power up the hill and you coast down the hill for, half a mile.
You're going uphill and
You're basically just standing still, but you're moving.
Yeah.
There's nothing that happens in the water that isn't because of your moving, unless you get caught in a flood or something. As we were saying before the show started, unless you're caught in a raging river or a flood, you're not going anywhere in the water unless you're doing it under your own power. And so it does tend to burn more calories. And one of the challenges with diabetes and swimming is that if you are prone to low blood sugars, how are you going to know that? I was very grateful to be part of a beta testing program with, can I mention brands here?
Sure.
Garmin and Dexcom. They rolled out.
Except for those two.
Yeah, right. I was grateful to be part of the beta testing program for the, I don't know what you call it exactly, but the CGM readout where your Dexcom would send numbers to the Garmin watch.
Oh, really? You were the first ones?
Among the first.
Wow.
And we tested it in open water. I had my phone in a dry bag in my visibility buoy. And I cannot tell you how important it was to me to be able to see my blood sugar while I was in the water and to know that it wasn't 57, and I still needed to go 150 yards to get back to shore while my blood sugar was dropping and I was at risk of losing consciousness. The confidence that it gave me to be able to see my blood sugar on my watch and to know, all right, pull a maple syrup out from underneath the leg of my jammies. No, sorry, not jammies, jammers. I don't, it's like you swim in your jammies, but
You can go with that.
it's not cool. To be able to pull like a maple syrup packet or something out from underneath the leg of my jammers, pop it into my mouth, go easy for a while, let the sugar kick in, and then get on about my business was the sole reason I was actually able to complete a marathon swim with diabetes.
Yeah.
So some of the things you simply can't do without the supportive technology, but some of the things, even when you have that,
You just know it after a while.
yeah, you have to realize that your body is telling you something or it's trying to tell you something. And you also need to trust that your training program teaches you something every time. So every time you hit the water, you go a little bit farther, your blood sugar drops a little bit more, you need to add a little bit more sugar into your fueling program. And that's how I managed to get past what was a fresh new fear of being low in the water when I was the only person who could fix it and working my way around it.
I tell you what I've always been amazed at is when my blood sugars just started to really drop down, that just it's almost instantaneous. You could just put something in your mouth, and I mean, you kind of perk up. At least
Yeah.
I do. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but
Well,
it happens quick. Like
one of the things that I learned was that to be more attentive to signs I would not notice on land.
I bet.
So
There's a shark out there.
yeah, well, on land, one of the signs that your blood sugar is low that many people experience is a shaking feeling. Well, if you're in 69-degree water and swimming, you're just kind of,
Yeah.
you're cold, right? You're
You're
hypothermic.
supposed to shake.
Yeah, you're supposed to shake. It's cold. So you can't trust that.
Yeah.
But one of the things you can trust is, or at least for me, your mileage may vary. One of the things you can trust is that something will manifest itself. For me, it was the fact that my jaw would get clenched, that I would feel like the world was about to end, and that my form would just go horribly, horribly bad. I actually had a story. I was training with a fellow type 1 out at Lake Grapevine a while back, and we got caught in a hailstorm, and we were swimming back to shore, trying not to get pounded with hail as we came into the beach. And we walked up out of the water, and she said, "It looks like a storm is coming in." And I was feeling low. So my first reaction was, no, you're just low. But that feeling like the storm was coming in is a very common thing that you notice when your blood sugar is quite low. And I began to realize that that was a sign I could notice in the water. So I learned something there. Let's pay attention to things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. So, all right. So you run everywhere. You can swim anywhere. Tell me about the bicycle rides.
I hate that more than anything. I'm not fast.
You don't fall over either, so you're fast enough to keep.
Yeah, I'm slow. I probably stops and restroom stops and everything figured in. I probably don't average faster than maybe 11 miles an hour, but I get there. In my own time, I get there. So it's a challenge for me to do things like the 62-mile ride at Tour de Cure and finish on time. But I get out there and do it because for me, that's a hard thing. And I'm surrounded by other diabetics who are aware of what's going on. That's actually one of the things, by the way, a little plug for Tour de Cure. One of the things that's nice is you can go out and do these things that are so hard to do individually, and you're surrounded by tribe. So for the bike, for me, I knew I was slow. I had to build up confidence. And one of the things that I realized when, after I had trained to do Ironman Texas, was that I still wasn't very fast. So I focused on the things that weren't cycling. So, you do 112 miles of cycling in a single day. You can imagine there are reasons and times when you're not on the bike. One of them is when you have to visit the porta potties. So I learned to pee really fast. The other thing I learned to do was fill up my water bottle really fast. There's a thing that you learn if you learn either by doing the race or by practicing for it, which is if you've ever seen on television, these guys are cycling by and they grab a water bottle
Yeah.
and they throw their old water bottle in the
Yeah.
garbage and then they keep riding. So I had to practice doing that so that I never needed to stop unless it was to visit the porta potty. And then I'm looking at my
Water
watch.
bottle was
25 seconds, you're done. So you learn to do the things that improve your performance, even if they perform it just a little bit.
Mhm.
And I was pleased is not the word, but I was happy with myself somewhere around mile 90 when I thought to myself, I'm going to get the next 22 miles done. I feel like I have this in me. I had been going slow. I had been, they don't let you draft, but they let you pull in behind someone for less than 30 seconds and then pull out.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I had been doing that. I had been going slow. I've been riding in my low gear, spinning a lot, everything I could do to maintain progress. And we're coming up a hill, and I had not burned my legs out trying to king of the mountain my way up the hills. And I'm sitting here riding a $700 used road bike, passing these guys on $15,000 carbon bikes whose legs are cramping horribly, and they're standing by the side of the road just massaging their legs like crazy. And I thought, you know what? The turtle might just win. Not the race, but
At least you did it.
at least I did it. And I was ahead of these guys on expensive bikes because I was paying attention to the details.
Yeah.
I don't think with either type 1 or type 2, there's any way that you get a free ride on details. Your whole life is about the details.
Mhm.
But I've learned to be grateful for the fact that I would never have learned those lessons had I not had a chronic condition I had to manage. And I try to keep that attitude about it when I can.
Yeah. So tell me something. When we were talking on the phone last couple weeks ago, you said something to me that it really struck me as very important. I want you to talk about this for just a second. Your whole concept and theories about how stress is
Yeah.
something that with the way you described it when I heard it from you, it was almost like a somewhere between a no-brainer to a eureka moment that you said something that I never heard. So you remember the conversation?
I do.
Tell us
I
about
do.
wake stress and how that affects people with diabetes.
So there are two things. First of all, one of the things I've learned in dealing with type 1 and physical activity is that stress is a major factor in blood sugar control. It's not always obvious what is stressful because we talk ourselves into, I can get through this, I can get through this. And we think we're not under stress when our body is going, man, I don't know how we're going to get through this. And it can be psychological and it can be physical. I think one of the things that people don't realize that is obvious when you're engaged in a physical challenge is that, if somebody important to you has just passed away, or you've lost your job, or you've had a divorce, or something else that just sort of hit you like, a brick on the side of the head, that this is a very stressful moment. And it is quite possible, if not likely, that no matter what you do that worked before, the week before that happened, to keep your blood sugar in line is not going to work because your body is full of adrenaline and cortisol and all kinds of blood sugar elevating hormones. And you have to acknowledge that this is just the way that is. Your blood sugar is not going to drop if you keep dosing insulin on top of it because your body is in fight or flight mode. It's going to just keep trying to store that as glycogen. And being in stress mode means it's going to dump the glycogen right back out. So no matter what you eat, your body is like, no, and the bear is still chasing us. And it's just pumping sugar into your system. Nothing is going to make that go away short of calming down somehow, finding a way to get to your peaceful place, and then dosing with that. Dosing alone will not make stress go away. And the degree to which stress elevates blood sugar is one of those things that people are, professionals are just now coming to understand. I'm fortunate that my allergist is actually an immunologist, understands that well. He follows a lot of research, and there have been quite a few deep technical papers done in just the last 5 or 6 years on the effect of that stress has on blood glucose control in people with diabetes. So I would say, if you're feeling stressed out, if you're finding that, man, I don't know why my blood sugar is so out of whack, it's just been like this ever since I got fired. It's because you got fired. It's not because you have bad blood sugar control or you just kind of psychologically lost it because you got all this stuff on your mind. You're not paying attention to your blood sugar. It is because that bad thing happened. Most of us do not live our lives with bad things happening all the time. So regular blood glucose management, regular techniques are possible. But I ran into an interesting situation on my first 100-mile run in 2017. Somewhere around mile 64, as the sun was setting, I was run off the road by an angry motorist.
Oh, wow.
And my blood sugar spiked.
I bet.
It didn't help that I had just had dinner, but my blood sugar spiked from the stress. I had also, somewhere around mile 50, discovered that I had nearly full foot blisters. And I was trying to figure out a way to patch my feet up and keep going. And so I was climbing out of this ditch after I'd been run off the road. My feet were pretty much all blisters. I was pumping adrenaline because this guy had run me off the road. And my blood sugar was somewhere around 350 milligrams per deciliter. So I think we're talking 20 millimoles, something like that, for anyone who's watching this in Europe. And the effect that had was lost on me initially. I decided, you know what? I just had dinner. My blood sugar is 350. I need to keep running, maybe skip the next fuel stop. And that worked for a while. My blood sugar, kind of leveled out just a little bit. And I thought, okay, well, we're level at 350. Maybe it'll be 320. Maybe it'll be 310 if I just kind of keep going. On and on into the night. At this point, I'm at around mile 82, 83, 84, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's still 350. I have not eaten in 20 miles.
Oh, wow.
I have not had a gel. I've had some water. And I realized that, you know what? I've been pouring insulin on top of this. My blood sugar is going nowhere. And we got to around mile 90, so we have 10 miles to go. The sun has come up. It is getting warm. It's supposed to be getting harder. And I said to my wife, who was running the crew van, I've got to get something to eat. I think I'm going to have a migraine if I don't get something to eat. So I sat down on the side door of the van, where the side door opens, sat down on the floor of the van. And I said, can I just get a yogurt or something? So she handed me this nice full fat, full sugar, Danny-O or whatever it was, or Hope Yoplait or whatever. And I just sat there and ate that. That was probably 200 something calories. I don't know how many calories it was in a full fat, full sugar yogurt. And I went on running. I was happy. I had a couple of bites of something in my stomach, and my blood sugar starts dropping after I had eaten and not dosed. And I realized an hour or two after that, that what was keeping my blood sugar high was, ironically and paradoxically, the stress of not eating. When I ate, the insulin I had on board had something to do with it. But prior to that, it was just trying to store and then release glycogen over and over and over again. And I was meanwhile eating my body. Excuse me. And I think that it was then that it became so intensely aware of the fact that stress played an incredibly important part in the middle 2/3 of that race. I came in second from last, but I did finish. And I told myself that whatever I did after that, I was going to remember I needed to eat, even if my sugar was high, because this is how you fuel your body. The insulin is there to help bring things under control, but it won't make stress go away.